Hey, in this video we're going to look at the October 2023 Math SAT for the calculator section. So let's get started. Question number 1. The function gives the total amount, k of x, in dollars, Kayla earned after working x weeks at a bookstore. So this is x is the number of weeks, and whatever answer you get is going to be the number of dollars that she earned. And then after 10 weeks, what is the amount that Kayla earned? So pretty easy. You just plug 10 into x. So 260 times 10 is equal to 2,600. And so the answer is A, and we're done. Question number 2. The function f is defined by f of x is equal to x plus 4. What is the value of f of x when x is equal to 5? So this is as easy as it sounds. When x is 5, so plug this 5 in. So what is 5 plus 4? The answer is 9. So pretty simple once again, very easy. Question number 3. So it says, what is an equation of the graph shown? Well, first we can notice that this is a linear graph, and we know that the format for any linear graph is y is equal to mx plus b. So m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. First, what is the y-intercept? The y-intercept is at -1, so we know that b is equal to -1. Pretty easy so far. This eliminates b and d since they have y-intercepts of +1. So yeah, b and d are gone. Now we gotta look at a and c. So what are the differences between them? This one has a slope of -4, and this one has a slope of 4. A slope of 4 will be pointing this way from left to right, so it's going up because it's a positive slope. A slope of -4 will be pointing this way because it's going down and it's decreasing. It's a negative slope. So obviously, by looking at the graph, which one is it? It has to be a positive slope since the graph is going this way, so the answer is C. And we are done. Okay. Question number 4, it says, what is the minimum number of books in the book drop recorded during this time? So the answer for this is pretty simple, but you got to look at the y-axis because that's where the number of books is at. And then you got to look at which point on this graph or line was it the lowest at. So obviously it's this point here just by looking at it. And then you got to ask yourself, okay, at this point, what was the y value of it? So it's 1, so the answer is 1, and we are done. So it's literally that simple. Okay, so that's question number 4. Question number 5, let's scroll down. It says square root of m squared is equal to square root of 64 squared. And then it says, what is the positive solution to the given equation? There's two ways of doing this. You can literally solve it by looking at it, because both of these square root and square signs cancel. So they both go away, and you're left with m is equal to 64. So that's the answer. That's one of the ways of doing it. The other way is actually solving it using algebra or algebra ways. So first, to get rid of the square root, you would square both sides. So squaring both sides, this would give you m squared is equal to 64 squared. And then to get rid of the square root both sides. So take the square root like this, you get that m is equal to 64. So we get the same answer no matter what, so we know we are correct. Question number 6. For the polynomial function f, the table shows some values of x and their corresponding values of f of x. And then it says, which of the following could be the graph of y equals f of x? Okay, so I guess the first point exists at -4, 0. That's our first point. Second point is at -1, 3. And third point is at 1, 5. And then we gotta see which of these graphs includes all three of these points, and that would be the corresponding graph that we want to choose as our answer. Okay, so first, let's look at the first point, like I said, -4, 0. Let's look at each of these. At -4, is this at 0? No, so A is wrong. At -4, is this at 0? Is B at 0? Yes, so I'm going to check mark that point. Okay, for C, at -4, is it at 0? Yes. So I'm going to also check mark C at that point. But for D, at -4, is it at 0? No. So that is gone as well. Okay, second point, -1, 3. So now we got to look at -1. I'm going to do this in red. Yeah, so -1, 3. At -1, if you got to look at this closely, it's somewhere between here. Is this at 3? Is this approximately 3? Yes. So I'm going to check this as well. And then for this one, at -1, which is approximately over here, is it at 3? No, because 3 would be up here, but the point is down here. So this is wrong. That means the answer is B, but just to make sure, let's also check our last point of 1, 5. So at 1 for B, 1 would be over here. Is it almost at 5? Yes, 5 is about here, which is the right point. That means all 3 points lie on this graph. That means B is the answer. And that's it for question number 6. Question number 7 says that the scatter plot shows the relationship between two variables x and y. So this is obvious because it's a graph, the x-axis and the y-axis. So you can kind of ignore this first sentence because it means absolutely nothing. Okay, then it says a line of best fit for the data is also shown. So that's the line that we see here. For x is equal to 4, so when is x equal to 4? Let's first mark that. It's over here. And then it asks which of the following is closest to the y value predicted by the line of best fit. Okay, so basically, look at the line of best fit and see what the y value of that point is at 4. So if you trace 4, go up to this point over here, what is the y value of it? It's approximately 10, and that is literally your answer. So it's as easy as that. We're done. Question number 8. In a group of 8 children, 2 have freckles and 6 do not have freckles. If one of the 8 children is selected at random, what is the probability of selecting a child who has freckles? So to do this, you would need a fraction. The numerator is the number that we want. The denominator is number of total items. I'm just going to write number of total items. So yeah, once again, what is the number that we want? If we're looking for people who have freckles, there's only 2 of them. So we're going to have 2 on top. But then for the bottom, it's the total number of items. In total, we have 8 children because it's a group of 8 children. So it will be 2 over 8. If you put this on a calculator, which I don't think you need, but this would be equal to 1 over 4, which is equal to 0.25 as a decimal. So yeah, that's it for question number 8, and we are done. Question number 9, the ratio of Jupiter's diameter to Saturn's diameter is approximately 1.2 to 1. The diameter of Jupiter is 143,000 kilometers. What is the diameter to the nearest 10,000 kilometers of Saturn? Okay, so this is pretty simple. First, we know that this is a ratio because they told us that this is the ratio right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Saturn on top of Jupiter as a fraction like this. Okay, so if we know that the diameter of Saturn is 1 to 1.2 of Jupiter, because this was what we got. So Jupiter to Saturn is 1.2 to 1. So Jupiter is 1.2, Saturn is 1. This ratio is also going to be equal to whatever we want to know as the diameter of Saturn, which in this case is x, because we are trying to find it. But we do know that the diameter of Jupiter is 143,000 kilometers. So I'm going to write 143,000. So once again, this was the ratio that we got from the question. So I just wrote that down. But since this is a ratio, it should be equal to the exact same answer of the real answer. So imagine that this is x, which we are trying to find. It's the diameter of Saturn, which we do not know yet. But the diameter of Jupiter is given to us over here. But once again, it's a ratio. You can do this because they're equal. They're fractions. Okay. Now you got to solve for x, which is the easiest part. So we can cross multiply. You get that 143,000 is equal to 1.2x. Then to find x, divide both sides by 1.2. X is equal to, let me put this on calculator, so 143,000 divided by 1.2. This will be equal to approximately 119,166 and 2/3. And yeah, so approximately, since it's set to the nearest 10,000, 10,000 is over here. So this will be approximately 120,000 if you round to the nearest thousand. So the answer is C, and we are done. Okay, question number 10. In the given scatter plot, a line of best fit for the data is shown. So once again, it's the thick line that we see in the middle. And then it says, which of the following is an equation for the line of best fit? So first, once again, if you have a line, the equation will follow the format of y is equal to mx plus b. If you see anything about a line or a graph, write down in your head y is equal to mx plus b. This is correlated directly, and if you see one of them, you will definitely use the other. Okay, so now the question is, what is the y-intercept and what is the slope? Okay, so the y-intercept is pretty easy to find because it crosses the y-axis at this point. In this case, it's 2 because the line crosses the y-axis at that point. So b is equal to 2. And then, what is the slope? Slope is equal to rise over 1. I'm going to write that here. Rise over 1. So what is the rise and what is the run? If you take this triangle, for example, if you go up by 1, you also go to the right by 1. So rise over 1 is equal to 1 over 1, which is 1. Okay, now if you put all that together, you get that y is equal to m times x. In this case, m is 1. So 1 times x is x. I'm going to write x. And then plus b is equal to 2, so plus 2. Okay, and then which of these options is equal to x plus 2? 2 plus x is the exact same thing, so D is the right answer. Okay, question number 11. It says for the linear function f, the table shows 3 values of x and their corresponding values of f of x. Which equation defines it? Okay, so for this question, we gotta test out all the points and see what we get. Okay, so first, let's test point number 1. In this case, it's 0, 13, which tells us that if you plug in 0 into the function, you are gonna get a y value of 13. Okay, so let's try that. If you plug in 0 to this one, does it give you a y value of 13? Yes. If you plug in 0 to this one, also 13, because these will all go away, so you're left with 13. And same for the last two. So for the first point, 0, 13, we can't really use anything from that because all of these give us that point, because this will go away if you plug in 0, and you would always be left with plus 13. So that's that. So the first point, kind of useless. You can kind of ignore it at this point. Second point, we have 10, 9. So let's plug that in, 10, 9. Now what I'm expecting is if I plug in 10 into the equation, I get back 9. Okay, so let's try this. If you plug in 10 over here, you get negative 4 times 10 plus 13. This is equal to negative 40 plus 13. Is this equal to 9? Definitely not, because this is negative 40 is a lot bigger than 13 as a value. So if you actually do this, you would get 27 or negative 27. So this is definitely not the right answer. So A is definitely wrong. Let's try the same thing for B. Plug in 10. So if you plug in 10 into x, you get negative 2 times 10 plus 13, which is equal to negative 20 plus 13, which is still negative 7. Did we get 9? No. So B is also wrong. For C, let's do the exact same thing once again. And by the way, I'm doing this on paper with you guys, but if you want, this is the calculator section, so you can definitely use a calculator for this part. Okay, so let's do this exact same thing for part C. Plug in 10. This would be negative 5 over 2 times 10 plus 13. This is the exact same as 25 plus negative 25 plus 13, but even this is still too small. This would give you negative 12, which is definitely the wrong answer. So far, in theory, we should get D as the right answer because all these are wrong, but let's check it just to make sure. So I'm going to erase this work on top once again. But yeah, now we plug in 10 into x. You get that negative 2 over 5 times 10 plus 13. If you put this on a calculator, or if you actually solve it, you get negative 4 plus 13, which is equal to 9. So this point does exist because it matches, so D must be the right answer, and we do not even have to check 25, 25, 3. But yeah, that's question number 11. Question number 12, you have kind of an expression here, and then it says, which of the following is equivalent to the given expression? So you gotta look at this using like terms. So here we have 2 and we have negative 2, so those both cancel out because 2 minus 2 is 0. Then we have negative x squared, and we have another negative x squared. So since we have 2 of them, we're going to have negative x squared times 2, because we have 2 of them once again, which is the exact same as negative 2x squared. In other words, the answer is D. And we are done. Okay, question number 13. It says a data set consists of 100 values. The least value is 30, and the greatest two values are 80 and 125. If the value 125 is removed from the original dataset to create a new dataset with the 99 values left, which statement must be true? Okay, so if you look at all these statements, they talk about the mean or the median. So if you know that you removed the biggest number, the mean has to be affected because the biggest number just got removed. That means the mean is going to get smaller. So which of these kind of matches that? It says, the first one says the mean of the two datasets will be the same. This must be wrong because you remove the biggest number, the mean has to be pulled down because that biggest number made it unbalanced, if that makes sense. Part B says the mean of the new dataset will be less than the mean of the original dataset. Like we said, this is true because if you remove the biggest number, the mean must decrease as well. So the answer is B. But just to make sure, let's look at C and D. Let's explain why those are wrong as well. Okay, they both talk about the medians, and then it says, for the first one, the medians of the two datasets will be the same. For the second one, it says the median of the new dataset will be less than the median of the original dataset. Something about the median is that you cannot actually tell what happens to it because you could have multiple of the same numbers. If you order the numbers from least to greatest, but the middle two numbers were the same, let's say they're both 6s, and then I removed the biggest number, so now the only middle number is a 6. This one is not the middle anymore. The median stays the same. But if it was another number, let's say this was 6 and 7 in the middle, so 6 and 7, before removing the point, this could have been the median of both. So 6 plus 7 divided by 2 is 6.5. That would have been the median. But then if you remove the biggest point, only 6 is now the middle, so the median would only be 6. So for the median, we can't really tell what it actually is because it depends on other values as well. So that's why you can't really tell what happened to the median unless you have the entire data set, so the answer must be B. Question 14 and 15 refer to the following information. A forestry department measures tree trunk diameter in inches at a constant height from the ground for each tree growing in a certain area. The data for 95 of those trees are summarized in the histogram. The first bar represents trees with a trunk diameter less than 6 inches. The second bar represents trees with a trunk diameter of at least 6 inches but less than 12 inches, and so on. So I guess the x-axis is the diameter. So between 0 and 6, there are this many trees. Between 6 and 12 inches, there are this many trees, and so on. So at the end, obviously, these are less because you don't get as many trees having a huge diameter. Okay, so that's the graph, which I also put on this page over here. And yeah, the actual question is approximately what percentage of these trees have a trunk diameter less than 6 inches? Okay, so less than 6 inches would be only this part of the histogram. So how much is this? This is 5. So these are 5 trees over here. And we also know that if you go back to the question, we had 95 trees summarized in our actual question. So we have a fraction which equals 5 over 95 because 5 is the number that we want. And 95 is the total number of trees. If you put that in a calculator, which I'm going to do right now, so 5 divided by 95, you would get 1 over 19, but multiply by 100 to make it a percent. So that would give you about 5.26%, which is pretty much 5.3. So we are done, and the answer is B. Question 15, which of the following is a possible value for the median trunk diameter in inches of these trees? So it's basically asking for the median trunk diameter. How do you find that? First, I'm going to erase this work that I have here because you don't need it anymore. Then you got to ask yourself, okay, so how do I find a median from a graph that looks like this? You got to think of it as usually you would get rid of the leftmost and rightmost numbers until you end up with the middle number. So right now, we're trying to find out where the middle is. These 5 and these 5 will cancel because there are 5 here. I'm going to do this in red. So 5 here and 5 here, so they both get cancelled because they're the leftmost 5 and the rightmost 5. They both go away. Here we have 10. Here we have 5 again. So only 5 of these go away, but 5 of these remain because we still have 5 that we did not use yet. Okay, after that, for these two over here, we have 30. And we have, for this one, we got 15. And for the middle one, we got 25. So for this one, you can cancel all 5. And you can cancel 5 of this, you would end up with 10. Here you can cancel all 10 with all 10 from here, so you end up with 20. And then you can cancel all 20 with 20 from here, you end up with 5. So the median exists in the middle bar, which is between 18 and 24 inches in diameter. So which of these numbers over here is between 18 and 24? The answer must be 20. So the answer is C. Pretty simple. If you want to rewatch that, you can do it because I did go through it a bit fast, but yeah, feel free to rewatch it. Okay, question number 16. The 3 candidates who ran for a city council position in Memphis in 2015 received a total of 14,705 votes. I'm going to do this in red. The ratio of votes for the first candidate to the votes for the second candidate was approximately 4-1. So let's say from A, first candidate, to B, the ratio was 4-1. And then the ratio of votes for the first candidate to votes for the third candidate was approximately 100 to 13. So if we had C as well, which is the third candidate, this would be 100 to 13, and we can kind of place all these dots. And then the question is, based on this information, which of the following is closest to the number of votes received by the first candidate? Okay, so this question is a bit difficult because you have to understand that you need to fill in either of these blanks. Both of these ratios are incomplete for now. So if you fill one of them in and you get what the ratio is for all 3 of them combined, then you'll be able to solve this question. The easier thing to do here is to go from 4 to 100 because this is easily done by multiplying by 25. So if you multiply this by 25, you get 100. If you multiply this by 25, you get 25. And we don't really care about this anymore because we already finished up this ratio. Okay, so we got a ratio, 100 to 25 to 13. Pretty simple so far. And now, if the question is, which of the following is closest to the number of votes received by the first candidates? First, we have to know that there are 14,000 total votes, so 14,705. This was the total. Now we want to multiply this number by a fraction that represents how much 100 is out of all of these combined. So how much is that? In total, we have 100 plus 25 plus 13. If you put this on calculator, it should give you 138. But for candidate A, they only have 100. So 100 out of 138 goes for candidate A. That's the fraction of how much they take out of the ratio. So if you multiply that by 14,705, let's do that. So 14,705 multiplied by 100 divided by 138. This would give you approximately 10,655.7971. But obviously you want to round to the nearest whole number because you cannot have 0.79 of a person. That means the answer must be C. Question number 17. Kai went on a bike ride. During the first mile of his bike ride, he rode at a constant speed S. Okay, that's pretty simple. After the first mile, Kai increased his speed by 100%. And then the actual question says, which of the following expression represents the speed Kai rode his bike after the first mile in terms of S? So basically, what is the speed after the first mile? If you increase by 100%, you are basically, so let's say the speed was S, and then you add another S because you increase by 100%, you're going to have 2S. So it's literally that easy. The answer is D. Okay, pretty simple. Question number 18 says, which of the following dot plots represents the dataset with the greatest standard deviation? Okay, so what does standard deviation mean in a nutshell? It means which dataset had the most kind of boundaries, had the biggest boundaries. So over here, the boundaries are between 4 and 8. That gives us a difference of 4. Here, the boundaries were between 3 and 5. That gives us a deviation of 2. Here, the boundaries are 2 and 5. So that's a difference of 3. And here, the boundaries are 1 and 8. That gives us a difference of 7. So obviously, 7 is the greatest. That means 7 is the right answer. And D is the right answer as well. Okay, questions 19 and 20 refers to the following information. A state representative wants to increase the amount of driving practice time required before a student can earn a driver's license. The representative surveyed a random sample of 50 from 250 students taking the driver's education class at Jefferson High School. The survey reported that 62% of students taking the class agreed that driving practice should be increased with an associated margin of error of 5%. So our sample is 50 and not 250. This is a very common mistake. But 50 people were sampled out of 250 taking the driver's education class. So 50 is our sample. And then it says the first question number 19 says, based on the results of the survey, how many of the students surveyed agree with the proposed change? Okay, so if 62% agree and 50 people were surveyed, what is 0.62 times 50? Put this in a calculator, you should get 31. So that is your answer and you're done. Super, super simple. Question number 20. Which of the following populations can the results of the survey at Jefferson High School be extended to? Okay, let's zoom in a bit here. So for part A, it says a student at any high school in the US. The answer for this is wrong because, first of all, they could be different ages because grade 9 to grade 12, freshman, senior, they make a difference. So this is an obvious mistake. So A is wrong. For B, students taking a driver's education class at any US high school. So this is the exact same thing because even though these are people who are taking the education class, it doesn't mean that they're the same age. So they might find it difficult to have the same experience levels and think the same way, or even more generally, the location is different because driving in New York is definitely different than driving in Maine for some random city that no one has ever heard of. So B is wrong. For C, students at Jefferson High School, so this is the first problem again where they're not the same age and people in general are not taking the driver's education test, so this is wrong. And then D, students taking a driver's education class at Jefferson High School. Yes, this is correct because these are people with the same experience level, they are interested in the same thing, and they're at the same location. So this is correct, and yeah, that's it for question number 20. Okay, question number 21. Which quadratic equation has exactly one distinct real solution? So if you look at a quadratic equation, the first thing you have to think of is a quadratic formula. So I'm going to write it here. So x is equal to negative b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now you have to consider, how do you get real solutions? It all depends on this plus minus. If this part was, let's say, equal to 1, then it would make a difference when you add it, and it would make a difference when you subtract it, because adding 1 is not the same as subtracting 1. If this value is equal to 0, does adding 0 make a difference from subtracting 0? No. So if you have 0, that means you only have one distinct real solution. If it was a negative number, then it would be impossible, because you cannot have a square root that gives you a negative number. A square root of negative 5, try this on a calculator, but you cannot get a negative number from a square root. So the only possibilities are either 0 or any other positive number. And like we said, any other positive number, let's say x, will give you two distinct real solutions. So we need this part to equal to 0. And how do you get 0? So we need to know that b squared minus 4ac with a square root sign is equal to 0. Square both sides to get rid of the square root sign. You get that b squared minus 4ac is also equal to 0. So yeah, now we gotta actually plug in the a, b, and c's and see if we get 0 for any of them. Okay, so for the first one, a is equal to 1, b is equal to 4, and c is equal to 16. If you put this here, b squared would be 16, and then minus 4 times 1 times 16. Does this sound right? Will it give you 0? You can put it in a calculator, but the answer is no. So a is wrong. Let's do the exact same thing for b. So for b, a is equal to 1, b is equal to negative 8, and c is equal to negative 16. Will this give you 0 if you plug them in? Let's try it. So negative 8 squared will be 64, minus 4 times 1 times negative 16. If you notice, both of these negatives will actually become positive, so you end up adding both numbers, which will give you an answer a lot bigger than 64. So this is actually also wrong, so we're going to cross it out. Part C, let's do the same thing. A is equal to 1, b is equal to negative 6, c is equal to negative 16. Once again, since c is a negative number, if you plug it in on a calculator, both negatives from here would give you a positive answer, and you would end up adding both numbers. So C must be wrong as well. So we are only left with part D, but once again, let's just make sure that it is correct before we move on. So for part B, we have A is equal to 1, B is equal to negative 8, C is equal to 16. Plug everything in. Negative 8 squared is 64, minus 4 times 1 times 16. 4 times 1 times 16 is also 64, so this is 64 minus 64, therefore the answer is 0, and therefore that matches, so the answer, it must be D. Okay, that's pretty simple. Question number 22. In a school debate club, each student earns 2 credits if they participate in a debate and lose, and 4 credits if they participate in a debate and win. A student receives an award after earning 100 credits, and then the credits needed for the award can be modeled by the equation given here, 2x plus 4y is equal to 100, where x is the number of times a student participated in a debate and lost, and y is the number of times the student participated in a debate and won. Then it says, which graph represents this situation? So pretty simple. What we can do first here is rearrange the equation so that y is what we have for the front of the equation, or it's basically the subject of the equation. Okay, so how do you get y is equal to something? First, I'm going to rewrite the equation. So 2x plus 4y is equal to 100. Subtract 2x from both sides, kind of like this. You end up with 4y is equal to 100 minus 2x. And then divide both sides by 4 to get rid of 4. You end up with y is equal to 100 minus 2x over 4. But we can write this as 100 over 4 minus 2x over 4, which will give you 25 minus x over 2. In theory, you'd have a slope of negative 1/2, because that's the negative x over 2, that's this part, this would be m. But then the y-intercept, or b, would be 25, so b is equal to 25. In other words, out of all these graphs, which of these make the most sense, and which of them have either a y-intercept of 25 or a slope of negative 1/2? Okay, so the easiest is probably the y-intercept to look at first. So here we have a y-intercept of 25, so this makes sense so far. Here we have 50, this is wrong because you want 25 once again. Here we have 50 again, so this must be wrong. And here we have 100, so this must be wrong as well. Therefore, the answer is A. It's that simple and that easy. Just look at the y-intercept or the slope of the equation if the y-intercept doesn't tell you the answer right away. Okay, so that's it. Question number 23. Rectangle X has a length of 12 centimeters and a width of 2.5 centimeters. Right triangle Y has a base of 10 centimeters, and then it tells you that the area of rectangle X is 3 times the area of right triangle Y. What is the height in centimeters of right triangle Y? So first, let's find the area of the rectangle. So how do you find that? You multiply a length times width, so 12 times 2.5. Put this in a calculator, so this should give you 24 plus 6, which is 30. Okay, so that's the area of the rectangle. And then it says here that the area of the rectangle is 3 times the area of the right triangle. That means the right triangle has an area of 10 because 30 divided by 3 is 10. So this is the area of the right triangle. And then it asks us for the height, giving us the base. So first we know for any triangle, the area is equal to base times height divided by 2. We know the base, which is equal to 10. We know that the area should also equal to 10, so all this should equal 10 at the end. We do not know the height. We know that divided by 2 stays the same. So how do you find this? We have this equation right here. Find what h is using algebra. So 10h over 2 is equal to 10. So 10h is equal to 20. H is equal to 2. So basic algebra, and your answer is B, and we're done. Okay, question number 24. According to a 2008 study, there were 5 known species of tigers, including the Amur and Bengal, living in the wild. Scientists estimated that there were a total of 4,000 tigers in the wild. Of these, 450 were Amur, so I'm going to write that down. So out of 4,000 total, we had 450 of Amur, and we had X Bengal. So X are Bengal. And then it says which inequality represents all possible numbers of tigers in the wild in 2008 that belonged to the Bengal tiger species. So basically find how much X could be. We're not saying find the value of it, but we're trying to find boundaries of which X could belong to, and that would kind of give us a proper answer. So other than these 2 species, it also told us that there are 5 in total, so there are 3 more. We don't know them, but we know that they exist. So let's say, I'm going to say 1, 2, and 3. So for these, we know that there must be at least one of each, because they have to exist. They're in the environment. So one of each is a reasonable guess for how much the minimum of each of them could be. Okay, if we take this minimum, so now take 4,000. First of all, subtract how much Amur we have, so minus 450, and then minus the 3 that we have here to give us the maximum possible number of a Bengal existing. So minus 3. If you put this in a calculator, you should get that this is equal to 3547. Okay, and once again, this number represents the maximum number Bengal tigers we can have because it gets rid of all the Amur and it gets rid of the minimum possible number of the other species that we have not talked about yet. Okay, so far we know that this is the highest boundary. So just by looking at it, I could already say my answer is C because it's the only option with 3547 as its higher bound. But let's still check the lower bound. Does it make sense that the Bengal can have at least a minimum of 1? Yes, because once again, we know that it exists. So the minimum Bengal tigers that can be found is at least 1. But yeah, so this is the boundary of the minimum and this is the boundary of the maximum. So this is the correct answer. And that's it for this question. Okay, question number 25 says, which of the following additional pieces of information provides enough information to prove whether triangle DEF, which is over here, is a right triangle? Okay, this one is pretty simple. We have to look at your 2 options here. So option 1 is to measure the angle of D. Does that help you find if this is a right angle or no? Yes, because if I tell you it's a right angle, then it's a right triangle. If I tell you it's not a right angle, then it's not a right triangle. Pretty simple, so this is correct. And then does the second one, the length of segment DF, tell you if this is a right triangle or no? It also does, because this is something that can be used for the Pythagoras theorem. So if I tell you that this is 4, and then you try the Pythagoras theorem, and it turns out that they actually match, you would know that this was actually a 90-degree angle, and you'd be able to say this is a right triangle. If, in the opposite, as a counterexample, I give you 10 as the side length of this, but then you measure it using Pythagoras theorem, and these do not match, then you would know that this is not a right triangle, because Pythagoras theorem should also always work for right triangles. So either 1 or 2 would work. So that's it, question number 5. According to a model, if 100 people see a sequence of 3 letters, 87 of them will recall the sequence immediately after seeing it. The model predicts that this number will decrease by 14% of the number the previous second for each second that passes. So out of 100, 87 of them remember a pattern, and then with every second that passes, this decreases by 14%. Okay, and this keeps happening until basically you have no one left. Okay, and then it says, which function represents this model, where f of t is the predicted number of people who will recall the sequence after t seconds have passed. Okay, so first, we know that you go from 100 to 87, so right off the start, the 13 that we subtracted don't really count for anything. They were just there. You can kind of think of them as like people who were just there, who didn't really participate, who weren't concentrating, who didn't focus, and they don't even count for the survey. So we start off with 87 as the number that we are multiplying something else with. So A must be wrong. Okay, after that, since we decrease 14% for every second, what are we left with? 100% minus 14% is equal to 86%. That means we are left with 86% of what we started with after every second. So we multiply it by 0.86 to the power of t, because this is the exponent that will tell you how many seconds have passed. So the answer must be C, because the number inside the bracket is 0.86, or in other words, is the percent of the remaining number of people who still remember the pattern. Okay, so the answer is C. Question 27. One of two linear equations in a system is negative 6x plus 7y is negative 6. So it's this part over here. And then the system has no solution. So we know that if you somehow try combining these two equations, there is no solution for the system. Okay, and then it says, which equation could be the second equation in the system? The first one is negative 6x plus 7y is equal to negative 6. We know that. And then we're trying to find out what the second one could be, so that this system of equations is invalid. Okay, for something like this, you always have to look for something being impossible. So for example, if I tell you x plus y is equal to 2, and then I tell you 10 minutes after it that x plus y somehow became 7. Is this possible out of nowhere for variables to just change their value? No. So that means this system of equations is invalid and there is no solution for them. Okay, let's try finding the same thing here. Which of these equations, out of all of them, which ones would look something like what we have, so that they give you a different answer for the same exact addition? Okay, so if we have, I'm going to rewrite this, negative 6x plus 7y is equal to negative 6. What we can see is that two options have 6x plus 7y. What does that mean? If you change 6x plus 7y, you're basically changing the signs on everything. The negative became positive, positive became negative, and then that would mean that this negative would also become positive. So you get that 6x minus 7y is equal to 6. Okay, so that's the solution that this gives us. Therefore, for part D, if you try plugging this in, you're actually going to get infinite solutions, because I didn't change anything at all. I didn't do anything invalid. If I tell you, right now, this is what this equation tells me, and then 10 minutes later, I tell you that this equation tells me the exact same thing. Did you gain any new information? The answer is no. So D must be the right answer, because it's not invalid, it's just not complete. Like, you still don't know what x and y are, but it's not invalid. For part A, here it tells us that this is now 0. Okay, so if I tell you that right now this is equal to 6, but somehow 10 minutes later it became a 0 out of nowhere without any reason, does that make sense to you? Probably not. So this is invalid, therefore the answer is A, because this system has no solutions to it at all. Question number 28. A cottonwood tree had a trunk diameter of 2 inches at the time it was planted. The tree had a trunk diameter of 22.24 inches x years after it was planted. The equation of 0.64x plus 2 is equal to 22.24 represents this situation. So this is the equation that tells us what happened. We started off at 2 inches. We ended off at 22.24 inches, and we grew something in the middle for the number of x years we waited for. So let's say you waited 10 years, you would multiply 0.64 times 10 to get 6.4, which means that the tree grew 6.4 inches in 10 years. But yeah, so 0.4x is how much is being increased after you have waited a certain amount of time. Okay, the actual question is, what statement is the best interpretation of 0.4x in this context? So yeah, like we already said, Part A says the total increase of the tree's trunk diameter x years after it was planted. This must be the correct answer because it tells us how much the tree grew after x years. But let's also see why B, C, D are wrong. So B is wrong because it says the tree's diameter x years after it was planted, because the diameter needs to be added by 2. This is not the final diameter because it will always be 2 inches short. So B is wrong. For C, it says the maximum trunk diameter of the tree over its lifetime. This also makes no sense at all. There's nothing to even relate to this question at all, so I don't think you would get confused with that one. Part D says the total increase of the tree's trunk diameter each year after it was planted. This would be true or correct if it was only talking about 0.64. Since we are talking about 0.64x, this cannot be true. When you multiply it by x, it's not a rate anymore, it's the total amount. Because 0.64 is the total increase, but 0.64x is the total increase after a period of time. Okay, so A must be the correct answer, and we are done this question. Okay, question number 29. The graph of the equation y is equal to negative x squared plus 40x minus 256 is shown. Which of the following equivalent forms of the equation shows the maximum value of y as a constant or a coefficient? Okay, so the question says that we know that all of these options are correct because they are different forms of the same equation. So it's not about seeing which one's valid, it's looking at which one tells you where the y value of the vertex is, because that will be the highest or maximum point of the function. Okay, so what does the vertex form look like? It looks like a bracket, so let's say x minus a. And then it looks like you square this, and then you add some other constant, let's call it k for now, but this constant will be how high you moved up to see where the vertex is. So which of these equations follows that? It must be B, because it has a bracket being squared, and it also has the number that we add, which is how much we moved up by. So 144 would be the value of y. But yeah, so that's B. Question number 30, it says, if x minus 3 over 7 is equal to x minus 3 over 9, the value of x minus 3 is between which of the following pairs of values? This one is very, very simple, because they try to confuse you on purpose by calling all this x minus 3. The trick is to convert this into another variable, let's say called y. If I called x minus 3 as y, so let y equal to x minus 3, I can replace the x minus 3's to become y's. I'm going to get y over 7 is equal to y over 9. And now all I have to do is literally solve it. So what is the value of y? Cross multiply first. Bring the 9 up, bring the 7 up. So 9y is equal to 7y. Subtract 7y from both sides. Then 9y minus 7y is going to be equal to 0. That means 2y is equal to 0, which means y is equal to 0 as well if you divide both sides by 2. And that is your answer. So if y is equal to 0, between which two values does the value of 0 exist? It must exist between a negative value and a positive value. So the answer must be B, because negative 1 and 1, between those exists a 0. Okay, so that's it for question number 30. Question number 31, an object has a mass of 200 grams and a volume of 10 cubic meters. What is the density in grams per cubic meters or cubic centimeters of the object? Okay, this is pretty simple, but it tells you in the unit that it's grams. I'm going to do it as a fraction. Grams over cubic centimeters, which is centimeters cubed. So if you put this in a fraction, you have 200 grams over 10 cubic centimeters. Your answer is 20. So it's literally that easy. So the answer is 20 and you're done. Okay, question number 32. An artist decorates square plates using the same pattern of blue and green tiles, where the ratio of blue to green tiles is 3 to 2. So blue to green is 3 to 2. Okay, and then for a certain plate, the artist uses 120 blue tiles and 20 N green tiles. So 120 to 20N. And then what is the value of N? So if this is a ratio, we can write it as a fraction, because all ratios are basically fractions. So let's do blue over green. That's what my fraction is going to look like. So 3 over 2, blue over green, is going to be equal to blue over green again, which is 120 over 20N. And now you just have to solve for N, so you can cross multiply. You get that 3 times 20N is equal to 2 times 120. So 60N is equal to 240. Divide both sides by 60, you get that N is equal to 4. And you are done. That is literally it. And that is it for question number 32 as well. Okay, so yeah, question number 33, we have two equations. Y is equal to 3x plus 9, and y is equal to negative 3x plus 3. And the solution to the given system of equations is x comma y. So there's one value of x to one value of y, where both of these are true. And then it says, what is the value of y? Okay, since I've noticed that this is a positive value for x's, this is a negative value for the x's, I'm actually going to add both equations because this will get rid of both x's. So if you add these up, y plus y is 2y. 3x plus negative 3x is 0x, so is equal to 0x, and then 9 plus 3 is 12. 0x goes away, so 2y is equal to 12. In this case, y is equal to 12 over 2, which is equal to 6. And we're done. That's pretty much the answer. Super easy. Question number 34. It says, a circle has been divided into 3 non-overlapping regions, 1, 2, and 3. So let's visualize that first. I'm going to draw this down here in the little space we have. So imagine this is a circle. I divide it into 3 regions, 1, 2, and 3. And we do not know the size of these regions because we were not told. Okay, then it says the area of region 1 is 4 pi square centimeters. So 1 is 4 pi centimeters squared. The area of region 2 is 12 pi centimeters squared. So for 2, it's 12 pi centimeters squared. And then for 3, it is 16 pi centimeters squared. So for 3, it is 16 pi centimeters squared. And then it says, if a point in the circle is selected at random, what is the probability of selecting a point that does not lie in region 2? Okay, so if it does not lie in region 2, it must lie in either region 1 or region 3. Okay, so our value of interest is going to be 4 pi plus 16 pi, because that's where the point would exist in our probability. And then the total probability to get 100% would be 4 pi plus 16 pi plus 12 pi. Once again, I did this because the top number is the number that I want. So imagine, since we want 1 and 3, these are the numbers that I added up together because the combined probability is what we want. And then for the bottom, it's the total number of probability, or the total probability. So you'd add up every single thing, even the unwanted outcomes in your answer. Okay, now you have to put this in calculator. You'd end up with 20 pi over 20 pi plus 12, which is 32 pi. I'm going to rewrite this. So 32 pi. So this would be 20 over 32, which is equal to 10 over 16, which is equal to 5 over 8. And that is your answer, and you are done. Pretty simple. Okay, question number 35. In 1980, the world population was 4.44 billion people. A model created at the time predicted that this population would grow at a rate of 0.076 billion people per year. In 2015, the world population was 7.3 billion people, and then the question is asking us for the positive difference in billions of people between the actual population and the model's predicted world population. Okay, so let's write down a few things. So at 2015, the actual value, so actual, was 7.35 billion people. The predicted, I'm going to write that down, was equal to 4.44 billion people plus a number that we would increase each year, which was 0.076. But then how many years did we actually wait? The difference between 1980 and 2015 is 35. So we multiplied this number by 35 to get what we actually increased by. Okay, so if you put this in the calculator, what is 4.44 plus 0.076 times 35? This would be equal to 7.1. So all this is equal to 7.1. And now you just have to find the positive difference. In this case, it just means subtract the bigger number minus the small number. So what is 7.35 minus 7.1? You would get that it is equal to 0.25. And that is your answer. So that is literally it. We have our positive difference for this question. Question number 36. Here we have that the given function m, which we have here, models the mass of a radioactive isotope, carbon-14, in a sample in picograms t years after the initial measurement. How much time in years does it take for the mass of carbon-14 in the sample to decrease to 5 picograms? Okay, so first you have to know what the equation actually means and what each number stands for. Okay, so This 10 means that this is what we start with. So by waiting 0 years, we have 10 picograms of total mass. If you wait this amount of time over this amount of fraction, it would end up decreasing by 1/2. So if we want up to end up with 5, 10 is equal to 5 times what? It is 5 times 2, because you basically cut it by half. So 10 divided by 2 is equal to 5. That means we want one whole cycle of this 1/2. That means we also want that this exponent on top to equal 1, because if 10 times 1/2 to the power of 1 is equal to 5, which is what we want, once again, we want the exponent to be 1. That's our main goal in this question. So if I ask you, t over 5730 is equal to 1, and what is the value of t? Pretty simple. Multiply both sides by 5730, kind of like this. You end up with t is equal to 5730, and you're done. That is the answer for t, and it's that simple. Once again, this makes sense because if this is the value of t, you plug it into the equation that we have here. This will give you an exponent of 1. This would make it so that this is equal to 10 times 1/2, which will give you 5, which is the number of picograms that we have left in the sample. Okay, that's pretty much it. Question number 37, the scatter plot shows the number of housing units in 2010 and 2018 for each of 11 US states. Align a best fit with equation y is equal to ax, where a is a constant, is also shown. So this line of best fit is over here. And then it says a point lies above this line if and only if it represents a state with an increase in housing units from 2010 to 2018 greater than 7%. What is the value of A? This question is easy if you know what the question is actually asking for. That's the hard part in this question. By this part over here, which is the main point in the question, this sentence, I'm going to read it again. It says a point lies above the line. So this line over here, a point lies above it if it has a difference of at least 7%. So we know that this is an increase in 7%. That means the rise will be 107 if the run is 100. Because imagine this as a percent. If you move 100%, you increase by 107%. Because this line represents that 107%. Anything above it will be above the line, and anything below 7% will be below the line. So what is rise over run? It will be 107 over 100, which in this case is also equal to A, because 107 over 100 is the slope of this equation, and we are done. Okay. Last question, question number 38. A circle in the xy plane has its center at 4, -5 and has a radius of 2. An equation of the circle is equal to this stuff. So x squared minus 8x plus y squared plus 10y plus c is equal to 0, where c is a constant. And then it asks you, what is the value of c? Okay, so let's try to rearrange this equation so that we have 4 and -5 as our center, and we have a radius of 2. First of all, we know that if you have this as your center, that means you would have had x minus 4, because this is always the opposite sign. So x minus 4 squared plus y plus 5. Once again, this is also opposite sign. Since it was negative, it will become positive. Squared is equal to r squared. In this case, r is equal to 2, so I'm going to replace this with 2 squared, which is equal to 4. So all this is equal to 4. And now let's expand this. So you'd end up with x squared minus 8x plus 16. This is what you get if you would expand this bracket. And then plus y squared plus 10x plus 25. And this stuff is what you get from this bracket, is all equal to 4. Now let's try compare it to what we have here. So first of all, both x squares can be ignored. Both -8x can be ignored. Both y squares can be ignored. Both 10y's can be ignored. This is a y, not an x. So yeah, both of those can be ignored. And then everything else here is equal to c. So 16 plus 25 is equal to 4. But we want something to equal to 0, because c is equal to 0 in this case. So what we want is that you want this 4 to go over here, so that you would subtract 4 from both sides. You would end up with the right side being equal to 0. So 16 plus 25 minus 4 is what we want, because now these look the exact same. If you look at them visually, they're both equal to 0. So C must be equal to this value over here. So C is equal to 16 plus 25 minus 4, which is equal to 37. And that is the answer. And we are done the SAT for October. But yeah, hopefully you understood and hopefully this helped you. If it helped you, leave a like as it helped me. And leave a comment on what you would want me to do better or what you want me to go over or any topics that you would want me to go over as well. So that's it. But yeah, hopefully you understood once again. And yeah, that is it.